What's up, Headless Horde? Welcome back to the channel, guys. Let's go. Listen, we just watched episode 5 of Rings of Power, and I'm digging it. I'm digging this one. I like this one. I think it's probably my favorite episode of the season, honestly. I really like the way that they're. I mean, we didn't see everybody. Again, it's a huge cast, but we saw pretty much every main uh, storyline that's kind of going on. And I just really think that what we're getting to is we're going to be getting to a situation where we're just all meeting, at Ilarion, and that's where this massive battle is probably going to happen. I don't know. I'm sure we'll lose a couple people. Obviously, Sauron's not going to die or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really like this one. I thought it was good. All right. Let's see. Let me go ahead and just I'm gonna kind of run through the episode. Although the episode was really good, there wasn't like a ton on this one to like really talk about too much, but we're definitely gonna go through the entire thing. And then tomorrow I'm actually dropping my complete breakdown of the episode. And yeah. All right. So let me just do a couple little things over here really quick. What's up, Reef? How you doing, brother? All right, so actually, all I'm doing right now is looking at the name of the episode because I can't remember the name of the episode, and it's funny because I just made the video. So silly. I've literally this all day today has been like Rings of Power, like all day. So let me just look this up really quick. I don't want to tell you guys the wrong info. All right, it's episode 5. This one. Okay, there we go. This one was called Halls of Stone. Halls of Stone. All right, so we open up here in Khazad-dûm, and they are we know. So in last episode, we see that King Durin was again Durin, his son Durin tried to convince him that the rings were not like something that he should get involved with, and we don't really ever see King Durin like respond to him and really, and then next thing you know is at the end of the episode he's there and he takes the blue ring. And then so in this episode we see that he has it. He receives the first one of the 7 winnings for the Dwarf Lords, and you can tell right away that it's starting to affect his decision making, and it leads him to start having all of these dwarf miners start digging dangerously because he actually goes to his son Durin. He goes at one point. He says, you know what? I want you to dig right here. And Durin even tells him, he's like, listen, this is like a support wall for like the entire, I don't know what you call it, the kingdom or whatever you want to call it, or the caves. And he doesn't really care, and he starts doing it himself. And I don't think he's actually looking for sunlight, but that's what they end up finding. And that changes a lot of things for them because now they can grow, plants, they can grow crops in Khazad-dûm. So it's a big deal. And his thought is, well, if I found this, what other treasures may lie beneath these caves? So King Durin is really gung ho about doing this, and him and his son do have a little quarrel later on because he tells him after he found it, he's like, if I ever tell you to dig, you dig. And so he kind of becomes a little bit mean almost. And not that he was always like a go lucky guy, at least in the time that we've known him through the first 2 seasons here. But yeah, so I mean, it's interesting and very, very much vibes from Frodo, being in the original trilogy, but a lot of vibes from Frodo being, getting angry at Sam sometimes, and just being so overwhelmed and I don't say possessed, but like just overwhelmed with the ring, and just he didn't want to take it off. I mean, go back and watch those movies, especially at the last one. Frodo gets crazy. Then we head over to Aragon, and this is where we see Celebrimbor. He's kind of celebrating his success a little bit with the Dwarven rings. And then Anatar It's funny. Any regular person would probably know that there's something going on with Anatar. The dude is so cold, and I know he's faking it and he's taking on a different personality or whatever, but he's so cold. And poor Celebrimbor just wants to celebrate that he, first was able to make these 3 rings of power for the elves, and now he's making these 7 for the dwarves. Well, Anatar doesn't want to stop there. He now is trying to manipulate him and almost change his mind, I guess, that he wants to make 9 more rings for men. And the Celebrimbor doesn't think it's a great idea because men can be easily manipulated. And so we kind of see that it just, again, that power that Sauron has over Celebrimbor at this point is pretty incredible. And it's funny though, because in this episode we do see Celebrimbor kind of fight back a little bit. So I don't know exactly how this manipulation thing works with Sauron and these, other people. So it's interesting because I thought he was like totally under his influence in the last episode. But in this episode, like I said, he kind of fights back a little bit. And I found that really interesting because I wasn't exactly sure why or how that actually works. So I don't know if anybody in the chat knows, any part of that lore there that explains that, or if anybody watches in the replay. That's one big question I had that I didn't bring up in the video for tomorrow when I broke down this episode. But I was kind of thinking after the fact, I'm like, because I really did think in episode 4 that he was like completely under his control. And it just seems like he's still trying to convince Celebrimbor, which he does a great job of, obviously. We head back over to Pharazôn. And so if we haven't seen him since episode 3. Now, at the end of that episode is when he kind of took over Numenor for Queen Miro. And so here he's basically just scheming, man. This dude is a total schemer. And remember, he is also the cousin of Queen Miro. And he's basically scheming for immortality. He wants to have all the power. And this leads to a bunch of tension with his son Keeman and his daughter. Well, actually, it's not his son. It leads to the tension with his son, but he tells his son he's going to give him a mission. And this mission he has to go on to prove his worth basically to him. So it's interesting because Keeman hasn't really been in the show very, very much. A little more this season, I think, because I barely remember this character from the first season. But we see that Pharazôn is he's so power hungry at this point. And so again, he sends his son Keeman to do a task, which we don't know of what it is yet. And then also remember Elendil, his daughter Arianne, is actually now backing Pharazôn, and that leads to more turmoil for Elendil's family because they think that Isildur's dead at this point, and we have not really seen Isildur now in a couple episodes. Well, I guess maybe last episode he was in there briefly, but they still think he's dead, and so it's an interesting dilemma that these two families have at this point. It's again, I think they're doing a nice job. I thought this episode did a nice job moving it forward more quickly than others. Like I know I went on record saying that the last episode I didn't really care for that much. I thought it was just way too slow and nothing too much happened. But this episode, again, is there action? No, there's not a ton of action, but it does move the storyline forward much more than the last episode, which is one of the reasons why I liked it. And again, we did get to see most of the main cast. We didn't get to see the stranger. We didn't get to see Isildur. We see Galadriel very, 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 very quickly toward the end of the episode, but it makes sense for what happened at the end of episode 4. So we then see a little scene with Elendil and Miriel, and basically they're just kind of bonding over the turmoil and the grief over the turmoil in Numenor. It's just because Pharazôn has just been rising, and he's just a new influence, and people are following him, and But Elendo is staying loyal to her cause, and he, they kind of share a little moment there and everything like that. And it's cool to see. But again, Arian, she just totally is shifted. And I don't know if she blames her father for Isidore's death. I don't know. It's hard to tell because she doesn't ever come out and really say it. But it's interesting that she would just go ahead and aid Farazan. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. Because I think that's one of the more intriguing aspects of that whole plot in Numenor is, you could tell in season 1, she was like, she was all with her dad, and her brother. And now all of a sudden it's whole flip flop. And remember, she's also the one who kind of ratted out Mariel in episode 3 for using the Planeter or whatever it's called. But yeah, so moving on, we head on back over to Khazad-dûm, and so we have Disa and Durin. They're kind of out shopping. I guess this is like like a small city that's part of Khazad-dûm. I couldn't quite picture exactly what I was looking at. I don't know if it's actually in the caves or if it's an outer city or an extra city that's attached. Again, I don't know the lore as much. I don't really understand that part of it. But somehow they were like in a little city, and because they were in a market, and they were trying to get their daughter a gift for her birthday. And so they found this crystal, and they're trying to make some they're trying to barter with the salesman, whatever, and they end up buying it. And then we kind of see that Disa kind of goes off on her own a little bit there, and she finds some weird, like, I don't know if no one else knows about this. It seemed like it was kind of found easily, but she drops like this orb that she bought, and it just kind of just rolls, and going downstairs, and before you know it, she's like in this huge, deep cavern, and it looks like there's almost like a small lake in the middle. And I thought that was interesting, but this was a little weird. Like, what, no one's ever been there before? But, this happened because this orb fell, so you found it. I don't know. It was kind of strange for me, but it is what it is. And then we see, she's kind of looking, and she hears, like, some of the water moving and stuff. And, the only thing I could think of is that I want to say it was, like, one of the very first episodes of the entire series that we see there is possibly one of the Balrogs live down there, and those are the big giant fire beasts that we see in the original series or original trilogy, and that's what I think that I'm pretty sure that's the creature that Gandalf is trying to get rid of, and while they're in Khazad-dûm, like when it's after it's all broken apart and busted and all that kind of stuff and rotted or whatever you want to call it, but so I don't know. I think maybe it could be that. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now, because they did tease it way back in season 1, and yeah. So that's kind of what I am thinking. So we'll see what happens with that. And I don't know the lore, like as far as like what happens in the books and what had happened in the book. Because I did see some people on the internet were saying that it's too early for a Balrog, but we already got teased it. So again, the show is kind of doing its own little thing anyways. So I get it if people are upset with it, but for me, listen, I'm all in. I want to see one because I think those creatures are awesome. Then we head back over to Aragon, and we see so we have another blacksmith that was Celebrimbor. Her name is I believe is pronounced Merdania, and Merdania is kind of playing around with some of the new rings, and she goes invisible when she wears one. And again, obviously, this is just straight, reminding of Frodo whenever he would go and use the ring to kind of be invisible and stuff like that. So we kind of see her try that, and again, Celebrimbor refuses to acknowledge Anatar's role because he wants to kind of take the credit, even though it's Anatar who's kind of had the idea, and again, there's a few scenes here that you just completely start seeing Anatar's manipulation continue, and it's not even just on Celebrimbor at this point; it's also on Merdania. And they're he's just kind of pushing them towards the actions that he wants them to do, and just kind of further what his end game is. Because again, he wants to make these 9 rings for the men, and Celebrimbor is very, very against that. And again, that's I said it earlier. That's why I kind of feel that he doesn't. He's not really maybe quite under his control, like I said last week. So yeah, and then we're gonna head over to Numenor again, and so we have Elendil confronts Keeman. So they're in like this ancient shrine, and I'm not exactly sure what they were doing. They're kind of just like praying and all that. There's a bunch of people in there, right? And Keeman comes down, and he's basically telling people that Pharazôn is basically taking it over, and you can no longer pray down there and do whatever they do. So this starts a little confrontation between Elendil and him, and he basically just, he's kind of mouthing off to Keeman a little bit, but for the most part, he's willing to just go. And then Valandil. So Valandil is a supporter of Elendil, and he's also a really good friend of Isildur. So he comes in, and he's kind of he starts kind of fighting Keeman. Like they get into hand to hand, and Keeman at one point actually has Valandil in like, he's like got him into the water, and he's kind of like drowning him. And I'll tell you what, the way they filmed it, and the way his back in that water, like I don't know how he even got out, but somehow he does happen to get out of there by using his legs a little bit. And he ends up taking the sword that Keeman was carrying, and he literally could have killed him right there. I actually thought he was going to, but Elendil ended up, Elendil basically said, "Don't do it," and he listened, and he kind of just tosses the sword to the side, and sure enough, what does Keeman do? Because he's just a worm, and he ends up stabbing him right in through the back as he's looking at Isildur. And yeah, so they killed him off, which, again, I mean, I'm glad to see something happen, because like a lot of these characters have just been around. Yes, we lost Bronwyn, but we knew that because the actress wasn't coming back. So I would say this is like our first big death, I guess. So yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a good fight. It was a good scene, and it stinks that we did lose this character. But again, I just think there needed to be something big come out of this conflict between, I like to call them Team Elendil and then Team Pharazôn at this point. So what's up, Kenneth? How you doing, brother? Thanks for stopping in, man. Then we can head over to Lindon, and we haven't been over here in a while. So Lindon, this is where Gil-galad is, and Elrond's hanging out with him. And it's funny, Elrond this season, if I was to say I'm disappointed in one character's arc this season, it's gotta be Elrond. Like, I feel like he's barely even in the show. He's in it just to kind of help move other characters' storylines forward. Where in the first season, I felt like he had one of the most important storylines. And then this season, he's definitely taken a back seat. So I would say that's definitely one of the most disappointing things for me this season. But anyways, Gil-galad is there. He's having these crazy visions of Sauron's rise. And, he's talking to Elrond, and Elrond is, Elrond's warning him that there's an orc threat to Eragon. And again, this is where Celebrimbor is. And the problem is that Gil-galad doesn't think that he can aid a war against Adar and Sauron. So he doesn't think he can do both. And this here lies a big issue, because the orcs right now are actually headed toward, where Celebrimbor is. But they don't know that Sauron is there too. So that is one of the big problems, because like, yes, we know Adar and the orcs are going there to Eragon, but we don't even know where Sauron is, and we can't just deplete everything. So again, it's interesting because they probably could send everybody there and be okay, but they don't know that. And then again, the episode when I thought this episode was about an hour, it was a little bit shorter than some of the others, but and basically though, at the end of the episode, we have Galadriel. So at the end of episode 4, we saw that she was captured by Adar and some of the orcs. If you don't remember, she gave her ring to Elrond to take back to Gil-galad, and she ended up trying to fight off some of the orcs. And at the very, very last shot, we see that she is on the ground, and the orcs are surrounding her, and so Adar captures her. So here we see her arrive at a camp in Mordor. She is a prisoner at first, at least it seems that way, because she's in a cage. But Adar then opens it up, and it's kind of revealed that he wants to negotiate with her and have an alliance against Sauron. So Adar is looking to join them. It's interesting. So they're looking to join together, and I don't know what's going to happen. At one point, Galadriel does end up taking Adar as almost like her prisoner and puts a knife to his neck. And but I think they're probably going to join forces if I had to guess. Now the question is will Gil-galad learn of this? Because then he's able to send everyone there if he doesn't have to worry about Adar, or can it be a trap? Because that's another option. It could definitely be a trap. So, but yeah, I mean, that was basically the end of the episode. And I like this one. It was to the point. It moved, like I said, most storylines forward. I'm sure we're gonna get the Stranger next week. I'm sure we'll get Isildur next week. Again, in these types of shows with these huge casts, it's hard because there's so much. There's so much and so many different characters. So I think it's gonna be I think we're gonna be able to slow it down a little bit though, because I think once we meet up in Arion, I think it's gonna help because you have so many characters there. Kind of like Game of Thrones. Like think about like when they had the big battle at Castle Black. A lot of characters ended up being there. Same thing with like Blackwater Bay in season 2. There was 3 main groups that ended up coming there. So it's cool because they're able to like have all those characters in and give them something to do, because that's always one of the biggest issues with these type of shows, with these huge ensemble casts, is that sometimes there's not enough for them to do because there's not enough time. But yeah, again, I really enjoyed the episode. I thought it was really well done, and we have 3 episodes left. So yeah, I don't know, guys. Thank you so much. If there's no questions, you can always leave me a question in the comments down below if you watch the repeat. And again, tomorrow I'll have my more concise breakdown on the episode, and that'll be dropping tomorrow morning. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for stopping in, and have a great night. I'm gonna go watch some football, and yeah. Don't forget, keep those heads on, and I'll see you guys in the next video.